Ron, good morning.
Good morning.
So we're here to talk about cyber. So that's a huge subject, clearly, very topical at the moment. It's in everybody's mind. And at Veles, we've got something a bit different to say about that, and it's around the behaviour and the people rather than technology. Can you expand a bit more on what that is?
Yes, I remember sitting down with you, in fact, and we were talking around at the table and saying, look, the thing that's the oddity when we look at a lot of these incidents is how many of them involve a human error at some point. And however good the technical protection is, at some point, there's going to be a point where there's an opportunity for a human being to get it wrong. And that only has to happen once to be potentially disastrous. So it struck us, as you remember when we were talking about it, that actually we needed to think about, can we reduce the human part of the cyber risk? What can we do? And then when we looked at what people typically do, what we found was that typically they do a bit of awareness training and they do a spot of phishing. And what triggered my thought at that stage in the game was I've done a lot of training effectiveness and other stuff in the past. And that didn't seem to me to be the kind of thing that you'd need to do if you wanted a result. So if you think of the kind of Kirkpatrick thing where you start with reaction, did I enjoy the training? Did it seem relevant? Then did I learn anything from it? Then did it change my behaviour? And finally, did I deliver a result? We stuck right back at that stage one of you go through it, that's fantastic, I've ticked the box, I've done my mandatory training, that's over for this year, off I go. I got fished, I won't do that again, will I? Except until the next time. And you've all been there.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we actually doing anything worth doing? And I thought the thought was probably not. We're making the motions, but we're not taking it seriously and thinking, what do I do? I've got human beings in my organisation. And the next thing that struck me and others in the room was, look, are all organisations the same? And they're not. And it seems to me like we're all friends of Procrustes, if we're not. If you remember him, he had the iron bed. He captured the travellers, and if they were too short, he stretched them till they died, and if they were too long, he cut bits off the top until Theseus came along and gave him a dose of his own medicine. And I don't want to be a friend of Procrustes. I don't want to make everybody fit the bed. I want to go out there and see what can we do for you, your kind of organisation, because clearly a firm of lawyers is not the same as a firm of biro manufacturers, which is not the same as a charity. And they would be expected, very different people will work there. They bring themselves to work, they bring their personality and their values and their learning to work, but people choose to go and work in different places. I'm used to managing a lot of scientists when I was young, I managed a big scientific lab, and what struck me was how difficult they are to manage. It used to be described as herding cats. And when I later came to understand a bit about how human personality works, I understood exactly why it was like herding cats. And actually you get strategies that work for cats, but they don't necessarily work for people who are doing manufacturing, or they don't necessarily work for people who work in a finance department. And so a lot of what I think we need to do is to work with people to understand what people work in your organisation, not at a detailed level, but at a top level. So is this a creative, entrepreneurial organisation? And if it is, then you might expect that they're not strong on process control and policy deployment, because typically those organisations aren't. They're worried about creating the business value and the innovation and all the other things. They tend to go together, and they attract the kinds of people who like that kind of work. If you rely on policy and process control to cut your human incidence in that kind of organisation, you might be in for a nasty surprise.
Okay.
On the other hand, if I'm working in the regulatory department of a bank, I think I can rely on just writing a good policy and deploying a good process and allowing the bank's culture and procedures and the people who work there just to take that on and follow them. And those kind of examples tell you that actually organisations are very different.
Yeah.
Different people work there, they have different languages. They sometimes they hear things and sometimes they listen. And if I think I'm too busy thinking about my innovation, or I think I know about this already, and you present me with some cyber awareness, I'm going, yeah, that's fantastic. Tick, 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 done for next year, go. And again, that's something we'll all have seen, right? We might have even done it ourselves. I know I have. Yeah. At which point, there's things in there I should have thought about, and I didn't. Why? I was presented with something that wasn't at all interesting to me. Didn't seem to add anything to me. It was something I had to go through and tick off and get out of the way. Now, I had somebody come to me and say, hey Ron, look, read this paper. In the last year, we've seen all these changes in the cyber environment, and this is going to be a big thing to us because we don't think the technical measures will get rid of 100% of the problem. We think we need to get people to think about some of these things differently. Read this other stuff. Now, let's maybe have a workshop and talk about what are we going to do? So what are we going to put in place, us here on the ground, not policy that comes down from the top, to try to shut that off? What do we think? What ideas have we got that we might be able? And now you're talking to me as a thinking human being. and you're giving me information that gives me context as to why I should change my behaviour at all.
Okay.
And then you're helping discuss that with me in a participative way about how we might change behaviour collectively around here a bit. Yeah? And at that stage, I think you start to move forward. You get more of a chance of moving up that curve from just responding to being given a training pack to actually changing behaviour and perhaps getting a result. And my kind of ambition here is to get to the point where a client says to me, look, we've spent all this money with you, and I'm really not at all sure that we need to spend the money because we've had no cyber incidents.
Yes, I see your point. So my takeaway from what you just said is if we deal with AI and we respond to it as we can, and the market deals with that particular topic, it's still not good enough. It's still not addressing a fundamental weakness in the organisation, which will be the people using AI or the people using the technology. And therefore we need to no less add to the cyber proposition and not just treat it as a technology problem.
Indeed, if you like, it's another version of the old total quality zero defects problem. You can get rid of the first 80% of things by just putting firewalls up and making sure that you've got whitelists and blacklists and all that kind of good stuff. And you get down to the next point. But getting rid of the last bit requires you to work on just about everything in a passionate way. And that's exactly what you find in trying to drive out quality defects in manufacturing. And here it's just the same. So you get to the point where you've done all the bits at the front and you're less vulnerable than you were, but you're still vulnerable. And the problem with a lot of the cybersecurity things is it's only got to happen once. It's like they say about terrorism, isn't it? We're only going to be lucky once, you have to be lucky all the time. And it's exactly the same kind of asymmetry that you get with this problem. And I don't see how you can really squeeze out that last bit without taking the people side of the equation very seriously and doing better than we have done.
And that's what we at Veles Consulting concentrate on, bringing the whole thing together, be it the technology feeding through into the behavioural stuff.
And actually we often talk about behaviour, like behaviour of systems, behaviour of software, and then behaviour of people. So if you like, it's a holistic view of behaviour generally in your organisation. And I think that's the only way to get right down that curve and squeeze out the possibility of getting attacked.
Ron, this is an excellent conversation. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
We'll talk again soon.
Look forward to it.